warrior. From a victim of spiritual weather into a steward of spiritual climate. The battle does not cease, but you change. You are no longer a trembling figure facing the dark. You are a soldier, armed and armored, your inner light glowing from within that armor, illuminating the tools of your trade. You stand not in arrogance, but in humble confidence. You have been given what you need for the fight ahead. The sounds of the tools return, not as separate notes, but woven into a harmonious, resilient theme. A shield ringing, a sword cutting the air, a choir humming a low, strong note, all underpinned by a deep silence. They blend together into a single, potent chord. But tools in an armory are inert without a warrior to wield them. Knowledge must become engagement. We now turn to the stance of the spirit, the stance of the warrior, from defense to active engagement. The potent chord sharpens into a single, alert, and forward-moving tone, like a watchful sentry's call. It fades. Open with the alert, forward-moving tone from the end of point 4. It holds, then is joined by the sound of a deep, steady breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Then, the sound of feet shifting stance on solid ground, from a hesitant shuffle to a firm, planted, ready position. The voice begins with a new tone of quiet authority and resolve. There is a moment in every unseen battle when the tide turns. It is not when the enemy retreats. It is when you stop retreating. When you move from bracing against the blows to planting your feet, looking into the storm, and taking a single, deliberate step forward. This is the shift from a posture of defense to a posture of active engagement. This is the stance of the warrior. For too long, you may have conceived of this spiritual struggle in terms of endurance, of hunkering down, of surviving the barrage, of waiting for it to pass. And endurance is a vital courage, but it is not the final goal. The goal is not merely to survive the darkness, but to advance the light. To do that, you must change your stance. The defensive stance is reactive. It waits for the attack and then raises the shield. The warrior stance is initiatory. It is grounded in a fundamental, unshakable knowing. You have jurisdiction here. This inner landscape, this battlefield of your soul, it is your domain. The resistance is the trespasser. You are not a guest in your own house, begging for peace from an intruder. You are the lawful guardian, endowed with authority to establish order. This shift in identity, from victim to guardian, from refugee to sovereign, changes everything. The first action from this new stance is the proclamation of truth. This is not a frantic prayer for rescue. It is a calm, declared statement of reality from your position of authority. It is speaking to the atmosphere, to the confusion, to the fear, from the core of your inner light. It is the psalmist declaring, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Even while enemies encamp." It is Jesus in the boat speaking, "Peace, be still," to the storm. You do not shout from a place of terror. You speak from a place of seated authority within your own spirit. You declare the end from the beginning. This heaviness will not have the final word. My mind belongs to Christ. This confusion is not my inheritance. I proclaim clarity and peace here, now. Your words, backed by the conviction of your spirit, become creative acts that reshape the spiritual terrain. Next comes the discipline of focus. The tempter's strategy is to scatter your energy. The warrior's counter is ruthless focus. You choose one thing, one promise, one act of obedience, one attribute of God to meditate upon, and you pour your attention into it. You ignore the dozen other urgent spiritual tasks, and you tend the single flame in front of you. When distracting thoughts arise, you don't fight them. You acknowledge their presence and gently, firmly, return your gaze to your chosen focal point. This is the training of a sharpshooter's soul. It is the practice of Mary, who chose the one thing needful at the feet of Jesus, while the world's noise buzzed around her. Your focused attention is a beam of your inner light. A scattered light illuminates nothing. A focused light can cut through darkness and start a fire. This active engagement also requires the courage of forward motion. Often, the resistance is strongest around a specific God-given assignment, a call to reconcile, to create, to serve, to lead. The enemy will throw up every barrier of fear, inadequacy, and logistical nightmare to stop you. The warrior understands that sometimes the breakthrough comes not from more prayer about the obstacle, but from a faithful action through it. It is Nehemiah's workers building the wall with a tool in one hand and a weapon in the other. It is taking the first small, tangible step toward the calling, even while the internal arrows of doubt are still flying. You move your feet. You send the email. You make the apology. You write the first sentence. Action in faith declares to the realm of spirit that you trust the one who gave the command more than you fear the resistance against it. Finally, the warrior's stance is upheld by the rhythm of resilient return. You will lose the stance. You will forget your authority. You will be knocked back into a defensive crouch by a sudden, powerful wave of oppression or a season of prolonged weariness. This is not failure. This is the reality of a long campaign. The warrior's skill is not in never falling, but in the speed and grace with which they return to their stance. It is a non-dramatic, almost mechanical reset, a deep breath, a recalling of truth, a whispered declaration, a small act of obedience. No lamenting, no self-flagellation for having fallen. Just the quiet, dogged work of getting your feet under you again, picking up your shield and sword, and re-establishing your line. This resilient return is, in the end, what wins the war. Adopting this stance does not mean the battle feels easy. It means you have changed your relationship to it. You are no longer a leaf in its wind. You are a tree in its path, roots deep in the soil of your true identity, branches outstretched in both vulnerability and strength. The wind still blows, but now it is testing your fortitude, not determining your fate. So feel your feet on the ground today. Take that deep, centering breath. Remember who you are and whose you are. And then, in some small matter where you felt resistance, take one action, make one declaration from the stance of a warrior. Not in anger, but in supreme confidence. You are moving from defense to engagement, and in that movement, the entire unseen battlefield shifts in your favor. The sounds of a firm stance and deep breath return, followed by a single, clear, forward-moving note that seems to march ahead with purpose. It fades. Voice. Yet even the most resolute warrior was never meant to fight forever alone. The lone flame is vital, but it is in the gathering of flames that night truly retreats. We now turn to the fellowship of fire, the power of shared light. The sound of a single match striking, then the gentle, growing crackle of multiple flames being kindled from that one source, creating a warm, gathering roar. It fades. Open with the sound of a single match striking, a sharp, bright hiss-pop. Then the gentle, growing crackle of a small, solitary flame. Hold it for a moment. Then distinctly, the sound of another match striking nearby. Then another, and another. The individual crackles begin to merge, layering, growing into a warm, gathering, sustained roar of a shared fire. Under this, the faintest hum of unified voices in a low, peaceful chant. The voice begins, warmer and more connective than before. Voice. The warrior's stance is a powerful silhouette against the darkness. But a silhouette is still a shape defined by the absence of light. Now imagine that warrior turning and seeing on the hills around them 100 other silhouettes, 1,000, each with their own flame. And as they gather, the shadows between them vanish, and the night itself is pushed back. This is the fellowship of fire, the power of shared light. We have spoken of the inner indestructible core, but this light was never meant to burn in isolation. Its nature is to connect, to reflect, to amplify. In the spiritual realm, isolation is the incubator for despair. It is where the accuser's voice sounds loudest, where the fog feels most permanent. The enemy's strategy is always to separate the wounded from the herd, to make you believe your battle is uniquely shameful and that you must fight it alone. But you are not alone. You were never meant to be. The first miracle of shared light is the breaking of the lie of uniqueness. When you find the courage to whisper your struggle to a trusted other, "I feel this heavy darkness. This doubt is paralyzing me. I feel nothing at all." And they respond not with shock, but with a nod and the words, "I have been there too." A spell is shattered. The terrible, glamorous uniqueness of your suffering evaporates. You realize you are not a singular, flawed anomaly. You are a human soul on a well-traveled, though difficult, path. The demon of shame cannot survive in the oxygen of shared testimony. Your story, spoken aloud in a safe space, loses its power to condemn you and becomes a map for others. This is the ministry of Me Too. From this broken isolation blooms the amplification of faith. Faith in the solitary crucible can feel like a fragile thread, but when woven with the threads of others' faith, it becomes a cable, a net, a lifeline. In a moment when your own light feels guttered by the wind of circumstance, you can borrow light from your brother, your sister. You can stand in the glow of their unwavering conviction when yours flickers. This is the profound meaning of intercessory prayer. It is not just asking for someone, but standing in faith with them, adding your light to theirs until their own flame catches again. A single voice declaring truth is powerful. A chorus of voices declaring the same truth becomes an undeniable reality in the spiritual realm, a sonic wall against which the whispers of resistance cannot compete. This fellowship naturally leads to the synergy of gifts. Your inner light has a specific color, a specific frequency. You may bear the light of encouragement, another bears the light of wisdom, another the light of practical service, another the light of prophetic discernment. Alone, you shine your color. Together, you create full-spectrum light. The problem that seems insurmountable to your gift of mercy is solved by your friend's gift of discernment. The weariness that overwhelms your gift of leadership is lifted by the community's gift of upholding prayer. You cover each other's blind spots. You fortify each other's weaknesses. You become the living embodiment of the Apostle Paul's vision. One body, many parts, all necessary, all honoring one another. Yet this fellowship is not a holy huddle, a closed circle gazing at its own warmth. True shared light creates the compulsion of shared mission. Light is meant to illuminate what is outside itself. A fellowship that exists only for its own comfort is a fireplace, not a beacon. The shared fire is meant to warm the lost, to guide the traveler, to expose the works of darkness in the wider world. Your collective light becomes a lighthouse. It draws others who are battling the same seas. It says, "Safe harbor here. You are not alone out there." Your shared testimony, your unified prayer, your combined acts of mercy become an irresistible force of spiritual gravity, pulling others from the orbit of despair into the kinship of hope. But how do we find or build this fellowship? It begins with vulnerability as an act of bravery. It means being the first to strike your match in the circle, to show your flame, however small. It means in a group choosing to say the true, slightly risky thing instead of the safe, superficial thing. It means seeking out communities, a church, a study group, a service organization, not that are perfect, but where the orientation is toward light, truth, and love. And then, investing in it, showing up, not as a consumer of spiritual goods, but as a contributor of your own unique spark. This fellowship does not promise a life without battles. It promises you will not face them alone. It promises that when you are too weary to hold your shield, another will stand over you with theirs. It promises that your victory will become their encouragement, and theirs, yours. The shared fire does not eliminate the cold of the night, but it makes it endurable. It transforms the lonely vigil into a sacred watch, kept together. The sound of the shared fire roars warmly, and the unified hum of voices rises into a wordless, triumphant harmony that is both powerful and peaceful. It swells, then gradually subsides back to the steady crackle. With our light shared and amplified, we come to the final integration. The battle is not an endless siege, but a forge that shapes a life. Our journey culminates in understanding the alchemy of struggle, forging an unshakable life. From within the crackle of the fire, a new sound emerges. The clear, resonant ping of a hammer on hot-shaped metal. It rings out, pure and strong. The fire sound fades, leaving the ringing note. Open with the clear, resonant ping of a hammer on hot-shaped metal from the end of point 6. Let it ring out, pure and strong. Then a second strike, a third. With each strike, the tone becomes clearer, richer, more musical. After the final strike, the sound transforms into the deep, resonant toll of a large, beautifully cast bell. It is not a lonely sound, but a full, declaring one. It vibrates through the silence, its echoes lingering long after the initial strike. The voice begins, carrying a tone of weathered wisdom and profound peace. Voice. We have walked the unseen battlefield. We have mapped its terrain, kindled our inner light, taken up our tools, stood as warriors, and gathered around shared fire. Now we arrive at the final, sacred understanding. The struggle itself is not the enemy of a good life. It is the forge in which an unshakable life is made. This is the alchemy of struggle. Alchemy is the ancient art of transformation, of taking base metal and, through intense, focused heat and pressure, turning it into gold. Your spiritual battles are not a curse to be escaped. They are the very heat and pressure, the divine curriculum, designed to burn away what is false in you and reveal what is eternal. The goal is not a life without resistance, but a life that cannot be moved by it. A life forged, not just defended. The first transformation is, from fragile belief to embodied knowing. Before the battles, your faith, your sense of light, might have been a beautiful theory, a borrowed philosophy, a fragile vase on a high shelf. But the furnace of struggle does not allow for decoration. It demands foundation. In the heat, you are forced to discover what you actually believe, not what you say you believe. Is God good when the darkness is total? Is love stronger than fear when fear has a tangible grip on your throat? You are hammered on the anvil of why until your answers are no longer recited, but written into the grain of your soul. What emerges is not a fragile belief, but an embodied knowing, a truth you have lived, paid for, and proven in the darkest laboratory of experience. This knowing cannot be taken from you. From this knowing arises the unassailable peace. This is not the peace of calm circumstances. It is the peace of the deep ocean floor, undisturbed by the hurricanes raging on the surface. It is the peace Christ offered when he said, "My peace I give you, not as the world gives." The world's peace is the absence of conflict. His peace is the presence of an indestructible center amidst the conflict. You have fought unseen enemies, faced internal desolations, and you have found that at your very core, your connection to the source of light held. That core has been pressure tested. Now, when new storms arise, as they will, there is a memory in your bones, a cellular recall that whispers, "You have been here before." The center held then, it will hold now. This is an unassailable peace. It is the quiet at the heart of the warrior who has seen the worst of the battle and is still standing, not in arrogance, but in settled, humble confidence. This process forges a third quality: compassion without condescension. Someone who has never faced the terror of spiritual darkness, the grip of despair, or the lie of the accuser may offer sympathy, but they cannot offer this. Your struggles carve out reservoirs of empathy within you that were not there before. You look into the eyes of another human being who is lost in their own fog, and you do not see a project or a problem. You see a fellow traveler. You recognize the terrain. Because you have been disoriented, you can be a gentle guide. Because you have felt the weight, your strength can be offered without making the other feel weak. Your scars become maps for others. This is the compassion of the wounded healer. It is the light that has passed through the prism of pain and now shines with the spectrum of true understanding. Finally, the alchemy yields a life of integrated purpose. You are no longer fighting against darkness as your primary occupation. You are now living for the light as your defining purpose. The battles become integrated into the narrative of your calling. Your testimony, the story of your struggle and the light that prevailed, becomes your most powerful ministry. Your hard-won peace becomes a sanctuary you can offer to others. Your compassion becomes the engine of your service. The very weapons you learned to wield become tools you now use to help free others who are still locked in their own fights. Your life ceases to be a series of skirmishes to survive and becomes a coherent, purposeful declaration that light is real, that it wins, and that its victory can be lived in a human life. This is the ultimate overcoming. Not the elimination of resistance, but the transformation of the resistor. You are the metal that has become gold. You are the carbon that has become diamond. The darkness did not create the light within you, but the contrast of darkness revealed its brilliance, its resilience, and its priceless value. So see your struggles through this lens. The heaviness is not just an attack. It is the weight that presses you into diamond. The confusion is not just a fog. It is the fire that refines your faith from theory to treasure. The accuser's voice is not just a lie. It is the hammer that forges your true identity with every blow you withstand. You are not a victim of a spiritual battle. You are an apprentice in the alchemist's workshop, and the master alchemist is with you in the fire. He does not waste the heat. He is intent on the gold. The resonant, it fades by the soft, warm crackle of the shared fire from point 6, and the golden hum of the inner light from point 3. All three sounds, the forged bell, the fellowship fire, the inner glow, weave together into a complex, beautiful, and deeply peaceful harmony. It is the sound of an unshakable life. Our journey ends here, at the beginning of a life forged. You now know the landscape. You possess the light. You are armed. You are standing. You are not alone, and you are being transformed. Go and live, not in fear of the unseen, but in the power of the light that has overcome it. The battle was never for your destruction. It was always for your making. The harmonious sound holds for a long, serene moment, then begins a very slow, gentle fade, as if moving into the distance, becoming part of the fabric of the listener's own spirit. It fades to a perfect, contented silence. Open with the sound of a steady, calm heartbeat. It is clear and strong. After 3 beats, a low, dissonant, almost imperceptible drone begins to creep in underneath. It doesn't overwhelm the heartbeat, but strains against it, creating a subtle tension. Hold this for 10 seconds. Then the heartbeat and drone fade. A resonant, grounded voice begins. Close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to see, to feel. What does resistance feel like? Not the resistance of a heavy door or a strong wind against your body, but the resistance you cannot see, the one that rises from within or presses from some unseen realm upon your soul. It's the feeling you have on the morning you vowed to start anew, only to find a leaden blanket of apathy has settled on you in the night. It's the inexplicable cloud of despair that descends in the midst of a good day. It's the sudden, sharp distraction that pulls you from a moment of deep prayer or focus. It's the whisper, just as you're about to step into your purpose, that says, "Who do you think you are?" This is the unrecognized geography of our lives, the unseen battlefield. We are fluent in the language of physical struggle, for health, for security, for success. We see these battles. We can name them. But what of the struggle that has no visible enemy? The fatigue that is not of the body, but of the spirit? The confusion that clouds the mind, not from lack of information, but from a fog that seems intelligent. This is the frontier we must learn to recognize. Imagine 2 landscapes. The first is your external life, your routines, your conversations, your visible achievements and failures. It is the world of action and consequence. Now, imagine beneath it a second landscape, a spiritual or energetic terrain. This is the realm of belief, of faith, of intuition, of your deepest sense of peace and purpose. In this inner landscape, the weather is not made of clouds and sun, but of forces like hope, love, clarity, and their opposites, fear, hatred, and confusion. The unseen battlefield is right here, in this inner landscape, and the conflict arises when a force of resistance, whether you call it spiritual opposition, negative energy, or the inertia of old wounds, moves against your inner light, your forward motion, your peace. How do you know you're on this battlefield? The symptoms are not in your calendar, but in your soul. The good day gone sour. When a profound, unexplainable sadness or anxiety arrives without external cause, like a sudden cold front in your emotional climate. The stalled beginning. When you feel a passionate calling to change, to create, to forgive, or to act, and then meet an invisible, viscous wall that paralyzes your will. The sabotage of focus. When your mind, usually capable, becomes a riot of fragmented thoughts, ancient regrets, or future fears the moment you try to pray, meditate, or concentrate on something meaningful. The heaviness of atmosphere. When you walk into a room, or even wake up in your own space, and feel a tangible, oppressive weight that has nothing to do with the air pressure, this resistance is clever. It rarely announces itself with a roar. It speaks in the first person, masquerading as your own voice. This is just who I am, lazy, anxious, a failure. It uses the logic of your past to imprison your future. You've always been this way. Why try? It isolates, making you believe you are the only one fighting this vague, shameful war. The first and most crucial step in overcoming unseen resistance is simply this: to recognize that the battle is real, to give a name to the nameless weight, to stop dismissing the profound spiritual fatigue as mere burnout, To cease attributing the sudden violent storms of doubt or fear to simple bad mood. This recognition is not paranoia, it is clarity. It is the moment you stop blaming yourself for the weather in your inner landscape and begin to look for the source of the storm. It is the difference between being a leaf tossed by every invisible wind and becoming a watcher on the ramparts of your own soul, learning to discern the movements in the mist. When you recognize the battlefield, you reclaim your agency. You understand that the feeling of being stuck isn't necessarily a personal failure. It may be a sign of resistance against your growth. The inexplicable anger isn't just a flaw. It may be a smokescreen thrown up to hide a deeper call to forgiveness or boundary setting. The profound weariness isn't a sign to quit. It may be the exact evidence that you are fighting something real, something that does not want you to advance. So today, practice this recognition. In a moment of quiet, ask yourself, where do I feel resistance in my life right now? Not inconvenience, but a deep, soul-level pushing back. Don't analyze it yet, just locate it. Is it a heaviness around a dream? A fog around a relationship? A constant static in your mind when you seek peace? Feel its shape. Acknowledge its presence. You have just taken the single most powerful step. You have turned on the light in the unseen room. And in that light, the vague shadows must now define themselves. A single, pure, clear tone rings out, like a bell or a struck singing bowl. It cuts cleanly through the silence, vibrating with clarity. It holds, then fades. Once we recognize the battlefield, we must understand what we are facing. We must begin mapping the terrain of spiritual resistance. A low, shifting, subtle sound emerges, like wind moving through a deep canyon. It fades. Open with the low, shifting, subtle sound of wind moving through a deep canyon from the end of point 1. It continues for a few seconds, then morphs into several distinct, unsettling tones layered together. A faint, repetitive whisper, a slow, heavy pulse, a high, distracting static, a dull, oppressive drone. These sounds don't blend, but clash. They represent the different voices of resistance. The calm, resonant voice begins over the top of this soundscape, which slowly fades as the voice continues, leaving only silence by the end of the first paragraph. On the unseen battlefield, the enemy is not a single monster you can face. It is a climate, a system of weather patterns designed to disorient, discourage, and disarm you. To overcome it, you must become a master of discernment. You must learn to map the terrain of spiritual resistance. 4. Think of resistance not as a thing, but as a series of strategies. It has tactics. It studies you. It finds your vulnerabilities, your old wounds, your secret fears, your moments of tiredness, and it adapts. Today, we name these tactics. We pull them from the shadowy realm of vague feeling into the clear light of understanding. When you can name a thing, you begin to break its power. The first, and perhaps most common strategy, is the sapper, doubt and discouragement. This force doesn't attack your body, it undermines your foundation. Its weapon is the whispered question that erodes faith. Is this even real? Did God really say? Will this ever change? It takes the form of nostalgic despair, making the past look brilliantly successful and the present look hopelessly barren. It's the voice that, after a single setback, declares the entire campaign a failure. The sapper works slowly, patiently, digging tunnels under your walls of hope until they suddenly collapse under their own weight. Its goal is not to make you rebel, but to make you give up, to sigh, lower your hands, and accept a smaller, grayer life. Then there is the mimic, confusion and deception. This is resistance in camouflage. It speaks in a voice so similar to your own, or even to wisdom, that it's almost impossible to detect. It takes a pure truth and twists it just 1 degree. It turns a call to prudent planning into paralyzing fear of the future. It morphs a moment of necessary conviction into rigid self-righteousness. It disguises laziness as waiting for a sign and cowardice as peace. The mimic's greatest trick is to make you believe the resistance itself is your own highest intuition. It clouds discernment, so you can no longer tell the difference between a warning from your spirit and a sabotage from the shadows. Perhaps the most acute attack comes from the tempter, distraction and obsession. If the sapper undermines and the mimic confuses, the tempter seeks to redirect your energy entirely. It cannot destroy your inner light, so it tries to get you to shine it on everything but your true path. It's the sudden, urgent craving for a lesser good when you're poised for a greater one. It's the avalanche of minor, important tasks that appears the moment you sit down to pray, create, or rest. It can also be the hyperfixation on a single negative thought or a past wound, a spiritual loop that drains all your emotional and mental bandwidth. The tempter makes the trivial urgent and the vital seem distant. Its question is always, why focus on that when you could focus on this? For those with sensitive spirits or deep wounds, there is the oppressor, heaviness, and accusation. This is not a whisper, but a weight. It's a spiritual atmosphere that feels like a dense fog or a lead blanket on the soul. It can manifest as sudden, unexplained sorrow, a feeling of being unclean or unworthy, or a crushing sense of isolation. Along with it often comes the accuser, a barrage of rehearsed condemnations about your past failures, your present inadequacies, your future doom. It speaks in absolutes. You always and you never. This form of resistance aims to cripple you with shame and make you feel separated from hope, from help, from love itself. It wants you to accept the weight as your permanent identity. Finally, there is the most insidious tactic of all, the fog, apathy, and numbness. This is resistance's final defense when passion, anger, or even sorrow have failed. It is the void. It's the feeling of meh toward the things that once set your soul on fire. It's spiritual and emotional anesthesia. The fog makes everything seem equally meaningless, the beautiful and the terrible. It whispers, why bother? Nothing matters anyway. It doesn't attack with sharp pain, but with a slow, chilling death of indifference. It is the enemy of love, for love requires passion, and the fog's goal is to extinguish every spark. Why map this terrible terrain? Because in the naming lies your power. The next time you feel that sudden, strange plunge in your spirit, you can pause and ask, is this the sapper at work, trying to discourage me? When you're tangled in mental loops, you can inquire, is this the tempter, trying to hijack my focus? That heavy accusatory atmosphere loses half its strength when you can declare, this is the oppressor. This is not the truth of who I am. This is a weather system passing through my inner landscape. Discernment is your lantern in this unseen war. It doesn't make the resistance vanish, but it strips it of its anonymity and its terror. You are no longer fighting a ghost. You are facing a known enemy with identifiable tactics. And as any general will tell you, understanding your enemy's strategy is the first step toward designing your own victorious counter-strategy. The battle is real. The resistance is intelligent. But you are equipped with a mind made for discernment and a spirit made for truth. A single clear note is struck, like a sword being drawn from a sheath. It is a sound of decisive clarity. But we do not face this mapped terrain unarmed. Within us burns a source of light no darkness can comprehend. Our next step is to understand the indestructible core, your inner light. A soft, warm, golden-toned sound begins to swell, like the first hint of dawn behind a dark ridge. It grows, then holds. Open with the cold, sharp sound of cracking ice, a deep, resonant shiver. Then, from the very center of that sound, the warm, golden-toned hum from the end of point 2 begins to pulse. It is faint at first, trapped, but it persists. The ice crack fades, but the golden hum grows steadily, unwavering, until it fills the space with a low, comforting warmth. The voice begins, strong and reverent. Voice. In the mapped terrain of resistance, amidst the sappers, the mimics, and the fog, a question begs to be asked. What is it exactly that all this resistance is resisting? What is the you that the storm is trying to extinguish? It is not your personality, not your talents, not your mood. These can be clouded, muted, shaken. There is something deeper, something that, when everything else is stripped away, your confidence, your comfort, even your hope, still remains. A faint, unkillable glow. This is the indestructible core, your inner light. What is this light? It is difficult to define because it is not a thought or a feeling. It is the source from which true thoughts and right feelings spring. It is the conscious awareness that witnesses both the storm and the calm. It is the quiet I am that exists before the I am afraid or I am tired. It is the conscience that whispers of a higher law. It is the spark of the divine, the image of God, the Buddha nature, the uncreated eternal part of you that knows truth, seeks love, and yearns for peace. It is your soul's pilot light, and it cannot be put out. The first quality of this inner light is its distinction from emotion. Your emotions are a weather system. They are magnificent, powerful, and real, storms of grief, sunshine of joy, mist of melancholy. But they are not you. The inner light is the steady land upon which all weather moves. Resistance will try to convince you that the storm is your identity, that the heaviness is you, that the despairing thought is your deepest truth. But the light is the part of you that can, even in the hurricane's eye, observe, I am experiencing a storm. This simple, silent observation is the first sign of the light's presence. It is your indestructible core saying, I am still here beneath this. Secondly, this light is constant, not consistent. Its brightness may seem to fluctuate, but its existence does not. Think of the sun. On a cloudy day, you cannot see it. You may feel cold, see only gray, and forget the sun exists altogether. But the sun has not moved. It has not diminished by a single degree. It is constant. The clouds, your emotions, the oppressive spiritual atmosphere, the lies of the accuser, are what are inconstant. Your work is not to manufacture sunlight, but to remember it is there, and to learn practices that help you rise above the cloud layer, even for a moment, to feel its direct, unchanging warmth. This brings us to the most important truth. The light is accessed, not built. You do not have to create this core, you have it. The entire spiritual battle revolves around your connection to it. Resistance aims to smother your awareness of it, to make you believe the clouds are the only reality. Your victory lies in turning your attention toward it, again and again. It is like tuning a radio to a frequency that is always broadcasting peace, wisdom, and strength. The static of resistance is loud, but the signal of the light is ever present. So how do we tune in? How do we touch this indestructible core when the fog of apathy or the noise of accusation is overwhelming? You begin with the grounding breath. In a moment of assault, feel your feet on the floor. Breathe deeply into your belly, and as you exhale, imagine your breath traveling down through your body, through your feet, and into the heart of the earth. Then, on your next inhale, visualize drawing up from that core of the earth a warm, golden energy, the very stability of the planet. Let it fill you. This isn't magic. It is bio-spiritual geography. It reminds your body and spirit that you are not a free-floating target, but a being grounded in reality. It creates an anchor. Then you engage the silent inquiry. In the quiet space after the breath, ask a simple question inward, not with words, but with your awareness. Where is the light now? Don't strain for a vision or a feeling, just ask and wait. You are listening for a shift in the inner atmosphere. It might be the faintest sense of warmth in your chest, a momentary quieting of the mental noise, a sudden, clear memory of a moment you felt profound peace, a single, unwavering truth like, "I am loved," or "This will pass." That is the light responding. It is subtle, but real. Finally, you make the declaration of identity. You speak aloud, if possible, to the resistance. You address it from the authority of your core. You say, "I am not the fear. I am the one who feels fear. I am not the heaviness. I am the one who carries it. I am not the accusation. I am the one who hears it. I am light. I am a child of God. I am love in expression, and you have no authority here." This is not positive thinking. This is truth-telling from the deepest place within you. It is the inner light asserting its sovereignty over the temporary weather of the soul. This light is your birthright. It is the treasure in jars of clay, St. Paul wrote of. It is the light of the body, Jesus said, was the lamp of your whole being. The battles you face, the doubt, the despair, the confusion, are not proof that your light is weak. They are proof that it is so powerful, so threatening to the realms of shadow, that they muster every tactic to make you forget it exists. You will forget. You will have days where the cloud cover is thick and low. The practice is not to never lose sight of the light, but to develop the unshakable faith that it is there, even when you cannot see it, and to know, with every fiber of your being, that this light within you is older, stronger, and more real than any resistance you will ever face. The golden hum swells into a soft, chord-like resonance, rich and deep. It holds for a long, nurturing moment. Knowing our core is indestructible is our foundation. But on the battlefield, we also need tools, armor, and a strategy. We must now look at the practical armory of the spirit, tools for the fight. The resonant chord shifts, becoming more structured and purposeful, like the sound of forging metal or weaving strong cloth. It fades. Open with the structured, purposeful sound of forging metal, a rhythmic, resonant clang that fades into the sound of a sword being slid into a leather scabbard. This transitions into the sound of a deep, focused breath. Then a series of distinct, symbolic sounds follow in succession. The clear ring of a bell, the solid thump of a book closing, the sound of hands working in soil, the murmur of unified voices in prayer, and finally, a profound, clean silence. The voice begins, resonant with strength and practicality. A soldier does not walk onto a battlefield unarmed. A builder does not raise a house without tools. And you, a bearer of the inner light, are not meant to face the strategies of resistance with bare hands and a trembling heart. You have been provided an armory. These are not weapons of violence, but instruments of truth, not for attacking others, but for defending and liberating your own soul. This is the armory of the spirit, tools for the fight. The first and most essential tool is the shield of prayer and focused attention. This is not the recitation of desperate words into a void. It is the conscious, deliberate alignment of your entire being with a reality greater than the storm. It is tuning your frequency from the static of fear to the signal of the divine. In the unseen battle, prayer is not a passive plea. It is an active declaration of jurisdiction. When the oppressor's heaviness descends, prayer is the act of standing up within it and speaking light into the atmosphere. When the tempter's distractions swarm, it is the act of closing your eyes and fixing your inner gaze on a single, sacred word or image, be it peace, grace, or the face of Christ in contemplation. This tool trains your will and reminds every force, seen and unseen, where your allegiance lies and from where your strength flows. Next is the sword of truth. Truth is your discerning, cutting weapon. It is the practiced ability to take a thought, a feeling, or a condemning accusation and hold it up against the light of what you know to be eternally true. The enemy's power lies in deception. The sword of truth cuts through the lie. When the sapper whispers, "You always fail," you counter with the truth of your resilience. "I have fallen, and I have risen again. My story is not over." When the mimic twists a virtue into a vice, you counter with scripture, wisdom, or the clear testimony of your conscience. This requires knowing the truth, immersing yourself in sacred texts, in philosophies of light, in the recorded experiences of saints and warriors who have walked this path before you. You must fill your mind with truth so that when the counterfeit appears, your spirit recoils at the dissonance. Then we have the breastplate of right action. In spiritual warfare, what you do matters as much as what you think or believe. Action grounds the light in reality. When you feel the fog of apathy, the most powerful counterattack is a small, kind, disciplined action. Make the bed. Take the walk. Write the letter of encouragement. Perform a task with excellence for no one's eyes but God's. This breastplate protects your heart from the piercing arrows of worthlessness and hypocrisy. It says, "My faith is not just a feeling. It is a force that moves my hands and feet." It builds a history of faithfulness that, when the accuser lists your failures, you can point to 1,000 small obediences that tell a truer story. No soldier stands alone. Thus we have the standard of community. This is the banner that reminds you whose side you're on and that you are part of an army. The isolation that resistance breeds is one of its most potent weapons. The standard of community is the trusted friend you can call and say, "The heaviness is back. Pray for me." It is the fellowship where you find your story reflected in others, where shared testimony, the spoken declaration of, "This happened to me, and this is how God brought me through," becomes a weapon that shatters the enemy's claim of uniqueness over your struggle. Your individual light is a flame. Gathered with others, it becomes a bonfire that can dispel a wider circle of darkness and warm a colder night. Perhaps the most underestimated tool is the cloak of silent contemplation. This is not retreat in cowardice, but strategic withdrawal for reconnaissance and recovery. It is the practice of entering the sanctuary of silence we discussed, not to hide from the battle, but to hear the commander's voice above the din. In the silent contemplation of God's nature, of Christ's sacrifice, of the Spirit's indwelling presence, the scale of the battle resets. The giant of your immediate resistance is seen against the backdrop of an infinite, victorious love. This cloak shields you from the feverish panic of the moment and infuses you with a perspective that is eternal. It is in this silence that strategy is received, wounds are salved, and your identity as a beloved child of God is resealed upon your heart. These tools must be taken up daily. They are not for crisis alone, but for the maintenance of your spiritual sovereignty in ordinary time. You don't wait for the invasion to learn the sword. You drill in the courtyard every dawn. How do you begin? Start with 1. If your mind is besieged, take up the sword of truth today. Write one eternal promise on a card and carry it with you. When the attack comes, read it aloud. If your heart is heavy, raise the standard of community. Send one text, Make one call. If your will is paralyzed, strap on the breastplate of right action. Do the next small